the reason a lot of you guys are here is because you're interested in voice acting, and a lot of you are wondering, how do I get into that business? So what I would like to ask is, Miss Allison, if you can share some of your experiences getting into the business, favorite stories, that sort of fun.
Sure. Um, it works because it's an industry up there, right? So my base was Toronto, and Toronto at one point was being called Hollywood North. There was a time there when it was really, really cool to be an actor in Toronto, and it was mostly when the Canadian dollar was about 65 cents American. So what happened was that the Americans moved up. Schwarzenegger was apparently really upset about it, that we were getting a lot of the stuff that was happening in California. They were coming up. We had all of the resources. We had trained people. We had the camera crews. We had all the tech guys. And most importantly, we had actors who had theater training. So we were the real deal. So they came up, and it was just cheaper to do stuff in Toronto than it was to stay at home and do it. And it was booming. And I happened to be in the right place at the right time. I came up through theater. A lot of the stuff that I did when I was just getting into the business on the whole was, I don't have a theater degree. I don't have a film degree. My degree is in psychology. I left Barbados in 1977. I had no role models to go and be a professional actor. I was a Barbados scholar out of Queen's College, and them people so don't become actors. It just don't happen. I had a couple of things that were open to me. Doctor, lawyer, that was it, really. So that's all you were allowed to do when you graduated as a Barbados scholar from QC in 1977. So I had a psych degree. I graduated in 1980 and hitchhiked from Sackville, New Brunswick to Toronto to become an actor, and met up with the usual thing, which is, great, you seem to have a nice personality, but you have no experience. You know that usual thing that they tell you, that so you can't get no experience until somebody give you a thing, a chance, but, right, so how are you supposed to get this experience if nobody does it? But some things are just meant to happen. So I couldn't get work, and I walked into, in those days, I don't even know if they still have them, there was something called a manpower office. Terribly sexist. I'm sure the politically correct Canadians have changed that now, but it was called a manpower office, and you went in, and there were basically all these little cards on the wall, and you went up and you looked for jobs. These weren't really careers, no, these are jobs, but I just need a job. And on the wall, I kid you not, was something that says actor wanted, and it was a community group. And it was called Pelican Players, and it was billed as Canada's first multicultural community theatre group. That was 1981. I haven't looked back. Between 81 and 87, I still had to have other jobs. In 1987, I got my equity card. I joined the union, and since 1987, until I came back to Barbados, I didn't have to work at anything else besides acting. So, and we have to get to the point here where at least some of us have that privilege of actually being able to work at what they are meant to do and what they are good at, instead of having day jobs and having somebody treat what is your calling as some kind of a hobby. We'll get there. So I had, to get into the voice work stuff, I mean, you have to have an agent. You just have to have an agent. You can do as much theater work. I had a whole bunch of theater work. I did that almost on my own. I did it through alternative theater, consciousness-raising theater, issue-based theater. I performed in every church basement, outside at the Canadian government at that point was hiring a lot of actors to work on various issues. So we would go into workplaces and talk about stuff. They were using theater as social change. And after I worked at that for a while, one of the things that really got me going was the fact that women started having serious positions of power. And so I got into mainstream theater because female directors decided to take a chance on me. And then I was out, and the reason that Storm sounds the way that she does is at the time I was doing Shakespeare. For about 5 years, I did nothing but Shakespeare. I was the Shakespearean actor. I was the first black actor in Canada to have a leading role on the main stage out in Stratford, which is the biggest Shakespearean festival. I had, because I can tell you a story, I had a short, little, neat little fro. Real short, neat. I remember I went into an audition and the man told me I needed to invest in wigs because the Canadian public was not ready for black natural hair. Things have changed completely, right? Judges got dreads and all kinds of stuff on TV. So sometimes when I hear young actors talking about nothing has changed and it's all the same, I said, darling, you too young to be talking about nothing ain't changed. 'Cause I could tell you I was there to witness the change. So I was also then the first black Canadian actor, and yes, I know some people can get vexed about my calling myself a Canadian actor, but we can have that discussion, but I have a Canadian passport, and the people who are responsible for my career is Canada. So I was the first black Canadian character to have a recurring role on a television series. There were simply no black people in recurring roles in mainstream TV. That was street legal. Mercedes, believe it or not, was the first one. There were no more. And then I was doing, and so I'm out in Stratford and I'm doing Shakespeare, and my agent calls and she says, you know, you got to come into Toronto. You got to do this audition. They're trying to find somebody to play Storm. It's an American series. They're trying to move all of the characters up now to be Canadians. They're about their third run through. So they didn't get down to me until they'd already done like 2-3 sets of auditions, and they just couldn't find this woman. So I go into the audition, and this is the one where they've got a tape deck. Now, I'd done a few auditions before, didn't get them, but I couldn't figure out why there was this tape. So this was back in the day, so it was cassette. Cassette there for us to listen to this woman who had done Storm before. So you're listening to this thing, but in the meantime, they're telling you all of this background information about Storm. And the big thing was, she has to be a black actor, don't you know, because she's from North Africa. So we have all of these, you know, Toronto is the most multicultural place in the world after New York. So there's everything. So there's actors there, actresses there from every corner of the African continent with very authentic accents. I have never heard really authentic, at that point, authentic accents on American television series. Had not heard it. So my choice was, do I try to do an authentic accent like I heard these actresses around me? Now, mind you, there's actresses that come back for their third audition. Sign up. They got a tape there. The lady don't sound African at all, this American actress. And I realized they don't want North African. They want something that doesn't sound completely twangy and American. That's all they knew that they wanted. They could talk North African all they wanted. Nobody was into authenticity at that point. And so I made the best decision, because what I did was I went in there and I happened to do this kind of voice that came straight off of doing Shakespeare in front of 1,800 people on top of this thing. And that's why she's sort of very plummy and round, you know. Listen, Professor Xavier Sauron has manipulated Rogue's mind. What is North African about that? So it's an interesting thing, because you have to listen to your director, you have to listen to your casting director. A lot of the time they know exactly what it is that they want. Sometimes they don't. And sometimes you can give them something else. And actually, I shouldn't really say that, because the casting director with Storm obviously knew what they wanted, but it was not what they were putting out there. Because they were telling you about this woman who came from North Africa. One would imagine then that you would want a North African accent. Not true. And I didn't know a whole lot about cartoons. It's just that I hadn't seen them. So that's how I got into the business. The other shock for me was, so I get this role, and kind of excited about it. But luckily for me, I was so on the outside of these things, because I think if I'd realized that I had gotten this absolutely fantastic role, that, you know, people were going to be geeks the world over. I mean, I got fan mail from across the planet. I said on this blog interview that I did, it was a, you know, IATSE crews, and, you know, these are men who work on film sets, and they really don't give two swift walk-ups about actors. Actors are all spoiled children. If we could make movies without them, that would be good. Them got cable to coil and things to do. Men got serious things to do, and men would drop cable when them find out that I was Storm. Yeah, man, for real. That's cool, man. You know? And then men just talking. So it was, but luckily for me, see, I didn't know. For me, it was another gig. I had, that would have been 1992, so I had 2 kids. I was a single parent, and I was in the most precarious business that exists on the planet, right? You can make $8,000 one month, but if you don't work again for the next 6 months, that 8,000 is run out real quick. You have no idea where your next dollar is going to come from. I mean, I know some of you in here are entrepreneurs, so you know what it is. I wasn't an entrepreneur, I was a professional, but a professional in a very precarious business. What I always say that it's interesting, because I was regarded as a successful working actor. They would trot me out all the time. There weren't that many successful black actors in the 1990s who were actually able to do the whole gamut that I was able to do, which was stage, film, television, and voiceovers for animation. And a lot of the time, I didn't know where my mortgage was coming from 1 month to the next. But that constitutes success. So that's something interesting to keep in mind.
Yeah, so, yeah. So, yes, one of the most asked questions is, you know, oh, I want to be a voice actor. And people say I have a cool voice. Can I be a voice actor? Actually, the truth is that it's not really about the voice, but it's more about acting. So you might think, oh, I have this cool, deep voice. Or you might say, I can do this voice and I can do this voice too. But to be honest, every single voice, there's a character for it. So don't worry about what kind of voice you have. Just focus on the acting and how to be able to present. It's your tool. So you can't, you know, you have to learn like you are learning singing or theater. But really, when I audition, meet many people, I always recommend taking classes. You know, there are a lot of theater classes, singing classes. It's the same thing. You know, this is your tool. If you damage here, you are not making money. So you have to be able to do whatever the director asked you to do without hurting your voice. So please remember that and then train your voice. And yeah. So
you have to be nuts. You have to be absolutely foolish and don't care for who care and jump in. The other thing that you need, apart from absolute fearlessness, is openness. Because you have to be able to listen to your director. So it's also no good to sit down at home and go, I got this thing sewn up. I know who Auntie First is. I'm gonna get on my best Auntie First voice. And then when you get in, they do, that was interesting. That was great. Now, if we could try something completely different, and you can't. And you can't because you've sat last night and you have worked and worked Auntie First, and that is the only thing that is in your head. And now they start talking about, you know, well, we're kind of thinking it's a cross between Donald Duck and Minnie Mouse. And you're going, really? Okay. And you switch. You're an actor, and that's why, you know, what Mami said is exactly it. It's not about the quality of your voice. It's about your ability to act. It's about your fearlessness. It's about your openness. Yes, there are other things that will help. You know, if you can do a few accents, that's great. If you can move from your top end to your bottom end, if you've got some range, that's great. After a while, though, you are probably going to be typecast because that's just the way it works. I've got a big, deep voice. I tend to play a lot of authoritarian women. The other thing that you should know, and you guys would all be better at that than me, is to be up on your pop culture references. I would be so lost because I would go in there and they'd be throwing these things at me. Well, no, we're thinking that she's a little bit of, and a little bit of that. And I'm going, I have no idea who you know or the other buddy is. Don't have a clue. But obviously, if this is your world, if this is how you think that you're going to be able to make money, then you need to know who Donald Duck and Minnie Mouse are. I'm reaching way back, but you need to know who they are so that when somebody tells you, when you've been doing something down here, and you're pretty sure that you've got Auntie first, and you know who she is, and they go, oh, no, Minnie and Donald. You can dig down into your repertoire and know exactly what it is that they're talking about and give it to them.
So when I meet tons and tons of actors and people submit demos, resume like daily, and then for me, a lot of casting directors just listen to your demo and say, oh, she sounds good, he sounds good, let's cast him or let's audition him. But for me, as a casting director, I have a responsibility to present you as an actor to our director and producer. I have to be able to say, yes, he can play the role. So I always love to meet them in person and audition them personally, because even you sound great on your demo, the moment I say, well, can you just a little bit do that way? And I want to see if you can really do it. So it's really be confident and don't worry about making mistakes or anything. If you're confident, you're out there, I can say, okay, you know what? He doesn't have a match on the credits, but he must have done many different things because he's got something, what he takes. But instead, I see all these credits, they come in, they can't even change the direction or nervous. Nervous tend to be, you kind of soft talk like this and it doesn't sound good. So I always encourage people to just forget about yourself and be out there. Don't worry about it. It is a crazy industry and we are all used to the craziness, so don't worry about it. Yeah.